Hey guys, welcome to Y&R Daily Update YouTube channel. Today's topics. Y&R's Phyllis needs to have an honest relationship with her kids. Although Phyllis' kids are grown, she still treats them as if they're little. On The Young and the Restless, January 6th, Phyllis proved that she needed to make a New Year's resolution. She needs to have an honest relationship with her kids, as they obviously don't trust her. And for good reason. Key takeaways: Phyllis tried to pry into Daniel's personal life. Meanwhile, he wanted to know what she was up to. Phyllis hinted that she had a risky plan involving Marchetti. Like Mother, like So Not, the GCAC dining room. Phyllis Michelle Stafford, who started the year with a break, frantically called Michael Christian LeBlanc and left him a voicemail. She begged him not to ghost her. Daniel Michael Graziade wondered who would be ghosting her. Phyllis asked her son to join her for a meal. She neglected the meaning of the new year, which is to make a fresh change. This was a good opportunity for Phyllis to have an honest relationship with her kids. There has been a lot of secrecy between her and Daniel lately. She ignored his prior question by trying to pry into his personal life. But how can she expect Daniel to be candid when she can't be upfront and honest with him? Daniel admitted that it's been a difficult year since losing Heather Vale Bloom. He wasn't sure if he wanted to move forward, but now he's realizing that he can be happy again. Of course, his mother wanted to know if Tessa Kate Fairbanks had anything to do with it. Phyllis goes back to her old tricks once again. She was back to scheming behind both of her kids' backs. Apparently, faking her own murder didn't teach her anything. Daniel wanted to know what Phyllis's phone call was about. Phyllis informed her son that she was finally doing something that wasn't selfish. She revealed that Billy Jason Thompson and Jack Peter Bergman asked her to save Jabot from Victor Eric Bredin, but she has to get something out of it. Of course, she's only doing it so that Jack can give ownership of Marchetti to Summer Allison Lanier. But of course, she didn't inform her daughter about what was going on. In Phyllis's mind, she thinks this idea will reunite her family. They could finally have their own empire, where they could eventually add media to the mix. Phyllis mentioned that she would love to have Daniel, Lucy, Lily Brooks, O'Brien, and even Harrison Redding, Munsell, work there at some point, but nobody can trust her, not even her own kids. Phyllis is always too busy scheming, which pushes her kids away. Instead, she should let them in, and they might reciprocate the favor. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Few characters on The Young and the Restless inspire as much passion, debate, and outright frustration as Phyllis Summers. For decades, she has been written as fiercely intelligent, deeply emotional, impulsively self-destructive, and relentlessly protective of the people she loves, especially her children. And yet, despite that professed devotion, one uncomfortable truth continues to shadow her relationships with Daniel Romalotti Jr. and Summer Newman. Phyllis has never fully learned how to be honest with them. Not selectively honest, not protective honest, not truth-filtered, through fear, honest. Actually honest. As Y&R moves into its next chapter, Phyllis's greatest growth opportunity isn't a new romance, a corporate comeback, or another war with Victor or Diane. It's finally building a relationship with her kids that isn't rooted in secrecy, manipulation, or emotional control. Phyllis's love is real, but it's also conditional. There's no denying that Phyllis loves Daniel and Summer fiercely. Her love has never been in question. Her methods, however, absolutely are. Phyllis's maternal instinct is driven by fear. Fear of losing her children. Fear of being judged. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of not being enough. That fear has shaped how she parents, leading her to control information, distort reality, and sometimes outright lie for their own good. In Phyllis's mind, honesty is dangerous, and that belief has done real damage. The pattern. Protecting her kids by controlling the narrative. Doesn't just want to protect her children's, she wants to manage how they see her. That's the critical distinction. When she makes questionable decisions, she often hides them. When she crosses lines, she reframes them. When she's at fault, she minimizes or deflects. Not because she doesn't care, but because she cares too much about maintaining her image as a devoted, self-sacrificing mother. Unfortunately, Daniel and Summer aren't children anymore. They don't need protection from the truth. They need respect. Daniel, the son who sees more than Phyllis thinks Daniel Romalotti Jr. has always been more perceptive than Phyllis gives him credit for. He's watched his mother burn bridges, resurrect herself, manipulate situations, and self-sabotage, often while insisting she's the victim. Daniel doesn't need Phyllis to be perfect. He needs her to be real. When Phyllis withholds information or sugarcoats her behavior, it sends an unspoken message. You can't handle who I really am. That erodes trust far more than any harsh truth ever could. Daniel's Disappointment in Phyllis over the years hasn't stemmed from her mistake, come from her refusal to fully own them. Summer, the daughter, who inherited the fire and the blind spots, Summer Newman is, in many ways, Phyllis's mirror. She shares her ambition, her emotional intensity, and her tendency to justify questionable choices when love or loyalty is involved. The difference: Summer has grown up watching Phyllis rewrite history, and that has consequences. Phyllis often encourages Summer's independence and it threatens her control. She supports Summer's decisions until they don't align with her own agenda. That inconsistency has forced Summer to mature faster, but it's also created emotional distance. Summer doesn't just want her mother's approval, she wants her honesty, especially when it's uncomfortable. Honesty isn't the same as confession, and that's where Phyllis gets stuck. One of Phyllis's biggest misconceptions is equating honesty with humiliation. She believes that telling the full truth means admitting weakness, failure, or moral compromise, and that those admissions will cost her children's love. But Daniel and Summer aren't asking for a public reckoning. They're asking for emotional transparency. They want to hear, "I messed up. I acted out of fear. I didn't handle that well. I'm still figuring myself out." Those admissions wouldn't weaken Phyllis in their eyes. They would humanize her. The damage of half-truths and emotional whiplash when Phyllis withholds the truth. Her kids eventually find out anyway because this is Genoa City, and secrets never stay buried. Each revelation reinforces a painful pattern. Phyllis denies or minimizes. Daniel or Summer discovers the truth. Elsewhere, trust erodes. Phyllis reacts defensively instead of reflectively. This cycle has played out too many times to ignore. At some point, "I was trying to protect you" stops being an explanation and starts sounding like an excuse. Why Phyllis struggles with accountability, especially with her kids, can admit fault to enemies more easily than to her children. That's not accidental. Admitting mistakes to Daniel and Summer forces Phyllis to confront her deepest insecurity, that she's not the mother she desperately wants to be. She fears that honesty will expose her as flawed, and that her children will choose distance over understanding. Ironically, it's the lack of honesty that pushes them away. Phyllis's kids are adults and they deserve adult truths. Daniel and Summer have lived full lives. They've made mistakes. They've hurt people. They've owned their flaws. They don't need Phyllis to curate reality for them anymore. They need consistency, accountability, emotional openness. They need a mother who can say, "This is who I am, messy, complicated, and still learning." That kind of honesty builds respect, not resentment. What an honest relationship would actually look like. An honest relationship doesn't mean Phyllis confessing every thought or impulse. It means owning her choices without justification. Her kids form their own opinion. Disappointment without spiraling, listening without turning the conversation back to herself. Most importantly, it means trusting her children to love her as she is, not as she performs herself to be. Why this growth is long overdue and necessary. Phyllis has evolved in many ways over the years. She's survived trauma, betrayal, and isolation. She's rebuilt her life more times than most characters. But emotional growth, with her children, has lagged behind. Y&R has an opportunity to tell a powerful story. Not of redemption through romance or revenge, but of intergenerational healing. Watching Phyllis finally choose honesty over control would be transformative, not just for her character, but for Daniel and Summer as well. The rinse take. Phyllis's strength has always been her heart. She just needs to trust it. The rinse. We don't believe Phyllis is incapable of change. We believe she's afraid of it. Her children don't need her to be fearless. They need her to be truthful. If Phyllis can let go of the need to manage how her kids see her and instead let them see her fully, she might finally experience the kind of unconditional connection she's been chasing her entire life. Final thoughts. Honesty is the only way forward. Phyllis Summers doesn't need to reinvent herself. She doesn't need to prove her worth. She doesn't need to win anyone over. She just needs to stop hiding from the people who already love her. An honest relationship with her kids wouldn't weaken Phyllis, it would finally set her free.